And one. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to our journey to episode 9, reviewing all the different films. That's right, episodes 1 in the prequel trilogy through all the way to
You just
the original
skipped
trilogy.
2 and 3. You're just like,
I
what?
said the
And then the rest
prequels.
of the.
I said 1, the
Hold
prequel
on,
trilogy.
You
I
said
said 1 in the prequel trilogy. People out there, you can go back and re-listen to this. I
you
said it.
you
I
said
said it.
1,
He didn't
I
say
said
it.
and then the
1
prequel trilogy.
and the prequel trilogy because I
But you
loved our recording of. I am not doing
skipped 2
this.
and 3.
Continuing on.
Episode 2, episode 3. Now we are on to episode 4, A New Hope. In our reviews, guys, Thursday is going to be off the hook. I'm just telling you that right now. If this is any sign of it, it's going to be off the hook, so prepare yourself. But A New Hope, it's time to take a look back at the film, also known as Star Wars itself, back in 1977. And let me say this. Watching A New Hope again, I know, Andrew, you and I have talked about it just outside of the fact, but I'm going to go and I'm going to have Sean answer the first question on this one. Let's take a look at, in particular, I know you and I mentioned some of the certain effects. The lightsabers look so much cleaner.
They're so much better.
Hope. I mean, so many different aspects compared to the original release, and you see what Disney Plus has done to even up it that much more in terms of effects and making sure everything looks crisp and clean. But Sean, what are your? I'm going to say it. What are your top 3? We'll start. Actually, let's make it top 4 because this is episode 4. Let's make your top 4 moments in A New Hope, at least in the Disney Plus release, or maybe in your experience as a whole here.
I mean, first of all, Disney Plus release for Star Wars, A New Hope was, like everyone said, it's clean. It felt like I was watching the prequels with that type of quality of animations and special effects to that. Yeah. And we're doing top 4, right?
Top 4.
Top 4. Okay. I guess number 4 for me has to be for me. I think it'd be the opening scene alone, just because it's like the beginning of Star Wars itself as a whole when it started, and it's just seeing that crawl come the first time you see it, you always get chills. I mean,
like I posted yesterday, like it gives me chills every time.
My number 3 has to be one of my favorite scenes alone, as without any context, is with Luke and Tatooine just looking over the twin suns. It's one of the. It's so short, but it's beautifully shot. What I was gonna say. Number 2 for me probably has to be. Has to be the ending.
The medal ceremony.
Medal ceremony, huh?
Or not the ending. I mean the
battle.
Yeah, the battle scene when they're all in the Y-wings, X-wings, whatever.
Yes, the trench run.
Yes, thank you. The trench run, and I think it's so well done. I mean, just seeing alone is in that era. I think it was so cool to see. It was different for a sci-fi movie, and it got really our first space battle.
Yeah, very true.
Yep.
And I think
my holds up today.
It does.
Yeah,
it still holds up. The whole movie still holds up. Probably number 1 has to be probably me personally, because first time we see Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan's is one of my favorite Star Wars characters after 100%. Ahsoka, and seeing it right after the prequels with Ewan did a great job of portraying Obi-Wan, and then going straight into A New Hope, you see it's
Alec Guinness.
He resembles him so fantastic. It's one of the best casting for. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Gerrish.
My top four. The fourth for me, open fair, 20th Century Fox, going into Lucasfilm and then into the Star Wars crawl. A New Hope's, no matter what, gives me chills. Out of the fanfare for 20th Century Fox, it just sounds more powerful with that version. The theme for the opening crawl is easily my favorite. It just sounds the best, and it gives so much history in the crawl itself.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so we're already caught up. 3 for me would be when after we first meet Ben Kenobi and Luke says R2 claims to be the property of an Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Right.
Watching it last night, like just the look on Alec Guinness's face, the acting that he like shows, like, wow, I haven't heard that name in so long.
Right.
And the music for that is like perfect for that moment, like for the reveal of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And actually, I wish they kept this scene in, because everyone's like confused, like, oh, why doesn't Obi-Wan remember R2-D2? There's supposed to be a scene in the Millennium Falcon where Obi-Wan walks up to R2-D2 and puts his hand on his head, and he's like, "It's good to see you again, old friend."
Yeah.
That would have been a cool like scene to see if they kept it in. My other favorite is Luke receiving his father's lightsaber. Mainly because the lightsaber looks so much, the blade itself looks so much better now. Like before it would look white and not blue at all.
Right.
With Disney Plus, they fixed it. It has the blue look that it's supposed to and everything like that. And number 1, the trench run. That's easily my favorite scene in Star Wars. Just the music, and you really felt desperate, like it had to be done like now. And the thing that I liked, like with Wedge, when Luke like tells him like his squad to get ready for the trench run, Wedge is the first to like jump in and be like, all right, I'm with you. And
very
stuff
true.
Like that. That's the thing that I noticed on my rewatch. It's like he's really quick to follow in Luke.
Yeah, he is.
And that says a lot.
It's a really good point. Yeah, I agree with a lot of the ones that you guys have. I think that there's so many different iconic moments, and we define it as A New Hope, but for people who were in the theaters in '77, I can only imagine. I lived through my parents' perspective and a lot of people who we've met at conventions and people in the Star Wars community who were there that night, that opening night in '77, to experience Star Wars for the first time. And I think my number 4 for me, of course, is when Luke experiences the death of Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, and he looks at Obi-Wan and he says, he just comes to the reality. Unlike Rey in The Force Awakens, who wants to run away from it, Luke comes to the reality of this really is his path. This is what he's meant to do, and he has nothing left on Tatooine. So I think that's for me, that's where Star Wars begins, is right there in that moment when he looks at Obi-Wan and says that.
With that scene when he sees Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, similar to Anakin in Episode 2, when Luke looks up, it's that with rage. Anger.
He's just like his father in that moment. He is just like his father. He's like, you know what? There's a certain amount of revenge. There really is that resides in Luke for what the Empire did to his family, or what he believed to be his family, because
Yeah,
it was really just
Obi-Wan's a
people who
dirty
adopted him.
liar.
And he is, and we talked about that actually when we were talking about the prequel stuff, the reality of Obi-Wan and everything that he was left to basically handle after the death of all the Jedi, and basically the fall of the Jedi Order as it was. Number 3 for me, in particular, is the scene when you have all the Grand Moffs and all the leaders of the Empire. They're discussing the Death Star, and Vader is standing there with Tarkin. And I think the one thing that still stands out to this day is Vader's force choking one of the Moffs, because they're basically crap talking the Jedi. Your religion is nothing but a fantasy. You are lost. You have no real path left, and he's choking him. But I think the one aspect of that scene that really stands out for me, and why I put it at number 3, is Tarkin tells Vader to release him, and Vader listens.
Yeah.
He understands the respect level that Tarkin carries.
Yeah, Tarkin is the only Moff or any regular person that's able to put Vader in his place.
Yes.
And
correct.
Honestly, the casting of Peter Cushing as Moff Tarkin is easily
amazing.
some of the best casting.
It is.
Like, I love Peter Cushing as an actor. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, especially in his horror works.
Just from the Hammer horror films, him as Frankenstein.
So
if you
good.
want to see like Peter Cushing playing an evil character, Moff Tarkin is evil,
but not.
You haven't seen anything until you see him as Dr. Victor Frankenstein.
Oh, he's amazing as Victor.
Which actually, fun fact, David Prowse, who was Darth Vader, was also a Frankenstein monster in one of the Frankenstein movies.
That's right. Yeah, there's so many fantastic connections. I know, Andrew, you and I have spoken about it multiple times between the Star Wars universe actors and those who were in the horror industry as well.
Like, look at Christopher Lee, Count Dooku, Count Dracula.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And George knew that when he casted for that film, that he needed people from that background, from classic horror movie background, to take on those roles. People who, I'm going to say, Peter Cushing was very striking. He was very eerie looking to begin with. Just, very, I always see him as a very Shakespearean actor alone. So to see him in that role was perfect. And, Tarkin was really in close with the Emperor himself. I think other than Vader, he was the closest to the Emperor at that time in terms of everything that was going on.
He was the only one during the Clone Wars that knew Palpatine's full secret.
Whoever else, yeah, and we see that, of course, play out in the Clone Wars itself, and then as we talked about in Revenge of the Sith, we see Tarkin in that quick little scene as he's speaking to Vader and the Emperor, probably about the construction of the Death Star at that time. So then number 2 for me, the moment that stands out, of course, is Obi-Wan versus Vader. Because that, for me, that's our first lightsaber battle that we get in the Star Wars universe. It's our first time seeing a Sith versus a Jedi, and I think the other thing for me too is that when I was younger, I didn't have any context to run with it. You know what I mean? Yeah. You saw it for the first time, you're like, okay, really, who are these two people? But now as an adult, and now knowing the prequel trilogy, and now seeing what the sequel trilogy is doing, and reading the books and the comics, that scene alone carries so much levity to it, and even more now than ever. And what Obi-Wan is doing when he looks over at Luke. He knows that Qui-Gon taught him that he could basically, much like Luke in The Last Jedi, he could give himself up to the Force and still have an impact on the galaxy in his own unique way in terms of training and showing the pathway that should be taken in that case. So that one, I think, stands out for me. And then why it's number 2 is the levity of it alone now in the Star Wars canon.
Those saying they wish the fight was like comparing their fight in Revenge of the Sith and then 20 years later that, in my view, Vader is more cautious. He's like, okay, I screwed up the last time. This time I'm going to be more cautious and not be as flashy. Same with Kenobi. Kenobi's just trying to survive as long as he can because he knows he can't beat Vader.
Right.
And The fight itself, yes, it's slow, but it does have emotion to it. Like every lightsaber
It's
fight,
impactful.
yes,
Very much so.
every fight has specific emotions with it. There's different emotion with Luke and Vader's fight in Bespin compared to their fight in Return of the Jedi. It's the same with the sequel trilogy. There's different emotions in each fight. Like, granted, there's not really a lightsaber duel in The Last Jedi, but there is a sequence where there is a fight.
Yeah, right. And my number one moment for me, I think this is going to take you both by surprise. Maybe. And is the one that stood out to me most.
Nothing surprises me.
What's that?
McClunky.
We did not speak of McClunky on this podcast at this moment. But no, it's the one that stood out to me most in my childhood. And someday when I go to Galaxy's Edge, I hope to relive this moment in particular. And that's when Han and Luke are fighting off the TIE fighters. And you get the iconic dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun, dun 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 dun, and just that. And then again in Force Awakens, we get it when they're flying through the rubble on Jakku, and they're Finn and Rey are trying to escape the planet from the rest of the Empire, trying to find them.
Hear it in Last Jedi as well.
We do in different
and
one specific
again, we
moment.
do hear it in Return of the Jedi too, with the Death Star battle there too. So.
Right.
Probably
So
we're gonna see Rise of Skywalker. So
easily.
So there's different.
Watch it play if the Falcon goes down. It's like
that would be crude. That would be just crude. And it's just one of those scenes that I continue to go back to, and I watch it, and it's like you want to be in the seat that Luke's in. You want to be fighting off those TIE fighters, and I don't know what it is about it, but it's the most Star Wars feeling moment that I have in A New Hope. Like, just actually placing yourself in that cockpit, and just the camera shots of actually lining up the shot with the TIE fighter on the screen, missing shots, having to navigate. It's just, it screams Star Wars to me and what Star Wars means. And I think much like we may see in The Rise of Skywalker, in particular with the space battle, we're going to get that from different perspectives. We're going to get that from the Falcon. We're going to get that from Poe. We're going to get that from maybe Snap Wexley or from one of the other ships. Who knows? Maybe the Ghost. Maybe we get something from that.
Maybe we'll get something on the Empire.
That would be great.
Sorry,
that'd be great.
First Order, whatever it's called.
The Sith Army. Yeah,
the First Empire.
And that's really a moment that stood out to me. I'll kind of pair it up with this in a way. Is when we get a look inside of Vader's TIE fighter in particular, and we also get the his fighters individually, and we get to look inside a TIE fighter and see what that looks like. Those shots right there are just iconic with Star Wars. They're so unique, and to be honest with you, George took those from the early World War I and World War II films, where they really looked right at the pilot. When they were I think about some of the original Pearl Harbor style films, Tora, when they looked inside the Japanese air fighters going in over the Midway and everything. That's the beauty that we take our history and what George did, which was take an aspect of film. And that's what he learned from all the people in film school, all of his professors, was that you got to take on that different perspective, because that's what film is all about. You got to show the people what it's like to be in that moment. So I think that's something, as we get it to make it or break it, that we'll discuss further.
Yeah.
But
that is another one of my favorites. It didn't make my top 4, but still, again, it's all the music that really sets it in motion for me, and for a lot of people. If Star Wars didn't have John Williams doing the music, or the specific music itself, it wouldn't have worked. Even Mark Hamill himself says that Star Wars without its music wouldn't have worked. The music captures everyone's imagination, and now with The Rise of Skywalker being the last film that John Williams is composing, from what I've heard, I'm not sure if he's fully retiring after Rise of Skywalker, but without him, these films wouldn't have lasted.
Right.
And he said in an interview he reworked Rey's theme a little bit to a more calm and adult feeling of her.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
So it's going to be interesting. And the fact that he has been fortunate enough to work on the same series of films and adapt and make more music and even better music.
Right.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
His music grows with us.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sean. It really does. And I think the one aspect of Star Wars, now that we head towards make it or break it, I'll do mine first and then I'll fire it around to you guys, is I think for Rise of Skywalker to make it, not only do we need those one-to-one personal moments where we look inside of maybe a Sith trooper having to fight off what's coming at him in terms of the rebellion. Whether that's also, I think what would be really cool is let's go into BB-8's head. Let's have a look at what he's seeing as he's going across
that would be
the Star
interesting.
Destroyer.
That's never really been done.
Never really been done before, where we've gone into the droid's perspective and has looked at what's going on. And I think that would be a cool aspect to bring in. I
feel like they're going to do that with C-3PO.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. That would really be cool as well. So for it to make it, I think you need to have those one-on-one personal moments, and I think you need to have the music to back it up, much like New Hope does. In those moments, you're able to understand in that moment where Vader is trying to line up his shots and get to Luke before he's able to fire the final torpedo into the Death Star and
I've always loved the sound of Darth Vader's TIE Fighter.
Oh, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
And you can tell he modified it himself.
That's Anakin. That's Anakin right there. Being able to modify ships to be able to accommodate them to what he wants and what he wants to get out of them.
Kept like the original Jedi Starfighter, like put parts of those into his TIE Fighter to like make it better.
Yeah. I mean, I think another cool. What do you think, Sean?
I said it's possible.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's possible, and I think the other aspect of it too is that, how do we know that Kylo Ren didn't take from Vader's TIE Fighter for his own? You know what I mean? Because there's one particular clip trailer that you hear his TIE Fighter, and the sound is so in particular. It sounds just like Vader's TIE Fighter. So I don't know. Maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe there isn't, but we'll find out.
Yeah, Kylo Ren probably has a little head of Darth Vader on his dashboard.
He's got a little Yankee Candle Darth Vader sent for his TIE Fighter to keep it nice and fresh. And then my break it for Rise of Skywalker in terms of A New Hope is, again, I don't necessarily need like a trash compactor scene. I don't need it was cool that A New Hope had that. I just didn't see they were escaping, but the trash compactor scene for me is I could skip through it. I really could. It never really carried that much gravitas to me or any kind of in-depth meaning to it. I think it was really used actually. The idea of them being crushed by that and them celebrating in C-3PO saying, "Oh, they're dying, R2, they're dying." It was used more for a humorous moment because up to that point the film was so serious and there was so much action that they needed something to happen. So I think with the Rise of Skywalker, there's just way too much that has to happen, and there's way too much that has to be accomplished for this entire thing to be wrapped up, that I don't think you can really have like a trash compactor moment or anything in this film.
No. Unless it makes sense and not
it would have to.
Nostalgia thing. Like Force Awakens made a call back to the trash compactor and stuff like that, but we didn't see it. Which I'm fine with that.
Yeah, we didn't have to see Phasma escape. That was not necessary.
No. She should have died there.
That's true. Sean, how about your make it or break it?
Before I sneeze, hopefully I'm probably going to sneeze sometime soon.
God bless you before you sneeze.
God bless you, Sean.
Thank you. For my make it probably has to be I want something similar to the what is it? I lost my train of thought now.
Oh, the sneeze distracted.
It did.
Ah, man, it sucks getting
Andrew, you
old,
go.
doesn't it?
Andrew, you go.
Okay.
All right, I'll have Andrew go.
I would honestly like a moment where if Rey is to meet a Jedi, it would be a make it for me. If she's to meet a Jedi and she calls said Jedi by their original name, that they have a similar reaction to like Obi-Wan did and stuff like that.
Interesting.
I would like a moment like that because we've only really gotten one of those with just Obi-Wan, so
Right.
it would be a nice kind of slow down moment. Like it doesn't have to be a major thing,
Right.
but it would be a cool thing to see. Break it.
It's hard with A New Hope.
It really is.
I guess I'll do my make it because I've thought of it now.
Yeah.
For my make it, I would love to see kind of a similar scene with Darth Vader, but Kylo Ren choking out someone, kind of what you said, Robin.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe with General Hux or
the beginning of A New Hope when he's like,
who would really stop? Oh, like he's interrogating someone.
If this is a council ship, where's the ambassador? Like that kind of moment.
Like I would love to see
cool.
that again.
Yeah, that would be.
That would be like this is a different Kylo Ren we're seeing.
Yeah. I guess for my break it will probably has to be. Why is the break it so hard?
Yeah,
it is.
I'm gonna do the same thing with what Robin you said with the trash compactor scene. It's really not necessary.
Yeah.
We don't need that type of stuff for the Rise of Skywalker. We kind of had that in Force Awakens a little bit with when Poe meets when Finn meets Rey at the beginning.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I have a break-up for this one.
Wow, impressive. So you think, Andrew, what you're saying by that is that A New Hope does a pretty good job of doing everything that a Star Wars film should do. I mean, it being the first one.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if I really want to be nitpicky, don't do a rehash of the cantina scene. That's really about it for me.
That's a good one, though. I like that. I like that. We got that in Force Awakens on Maz's castle, so we don't need that. We don't need that at all. I like those. Those are really good make it or break it, guys. One last thing I want to talk about quickly when it comes to A New Hope, and I think it's an interesting point that as we move closer to the Rise of Skywalker. The one thing that A New Hope did do is when we were first introduced to Luke, we saw a lot of vulnerabilities, much like we did with Rey in The Force Awakens.
No, she was perfectly fine. She has no issues or weaknesses. She's perfect.
Right, but
and people say Luke Skywalker is perfect.
No,
No.
he's fine. Anakin's fine.
No, I mean,
they're all perfect, right?
Yeah,
but not with me.
Except for Rey, she's terrible.
But I mean, in terms of like the mystery, there's both of them. Like Luke and Rey both don't really know why they are there. Luke is there with Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen because Obi-Wan gave him to him, but he doesn't know that. He doesn't know that. He was too young. He was a child. He would have no idea that that was the case. And Rey doesn't even know who her real family is. Luke, in all honesty, doesn't know who his real family is. So I think what we need to do with The Rise of Skywalker, and I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say, is, and again, the mystery of the family lineage. If they want to answer it, do it like they did with Luke. Make it be I mean, the Vader one was pretty major, but I think for Rey, it's like we've already done that. We did it with Luke. I think what would I guess make it for me in this case would be keep a little bit of that mystery there still. Answer some of it
But
because
not
that
all.
was but not all of it because we have so much other canon available to us
Mhm.
that could take that little moment and say, you know what, let's do something more about her lineage in a book. Let's do a little bit more of this
Or in a video game,
or
something.
in a video game.
Yeah.
Use your resources because I think if A New Hope was made in this time period in particular,
We'd never hear the end of it.
you'd never hear the end of it. And guess what? The beauty of it too is that there'd be so much other forms of canon that a lot of those questions could be answered in that way too. Unfortunately, I think George took a lot of the questions that people had and turned them into legends novels. And at that time, it worked. But unfortunately, a lot of that wasn't canonized. When Disney came around, it was like, nope, we're not going to touch any of that.
To be fair, George Lucas never considered a lot of the EU itself to be canon anyway.
Right.
So,
And
like
it's
certain, like the Thrawn trilogy, yeah, he can kind of considered that,
well, yeah,
and some of the Darth Bane stuff. But other than that, nothing like Palpatine's wormhole that wasn't canon.
right.
Chewbacca getting crushed by a moon, not
Oh, we're
canon.
gonna see. Maybe. You don't know. He might get crushed by a moon in Rise of Skywalker.
Well, I'm talking in general. Before even the buyout, George didn't even
Oh
consider
yeah, I
that
know.
really canon.
No. So it's we're in a very interesting place right now where I feel like since we're wrapping up these three trilogies, that there's some wiggle room and there's some places where I feel like some of the stuff from A New Hope could be used and may not be used because we had The Force Awakens. Uh, so I'll be fascinated to see. But what do you guys think? Like in terms of the Rise of Skywalker, it being so close now. I mean, this is about as close as we'll get, probably up and leading to our next couple reactions and some of
Yeah.
our views. For Rise of Skywalker to really be a different film, much like A New Hope was, it was unique and it was different to the fans at that time. These were things that we didn't see. You know, I guess it's a make it, but it's in a much more in depth way. Is there something that we haven't seen yet in the Star Wars universe that you would like to see in the Rise of Skywalker? Much like A New Hope showed us something brand new, something so different than we have seen before.
Brand new.
Brand new.
Like an aspect of the galaxy, something.
Maybe like a like not a different galaxy but farther away kind of thing. Like
That there's
they,
something
they go
beyond
they
this
go
galaxy.
through like a not like a portal but like an alternate dimension kind of type thing. I mean, and they skip to a different galaxy.
Well, they kind of
I don't know.
introduced that in Rebels with the World Between Worlds a little bit.
See,
Kind of, yeah.
That's where I'm leading to. That's where I'm leading to is
That
if you really want to do something different, that's the way to do it.
If they do that, you can quote me here. If they do that, it will probably take the place as my favorite Star Wars movie. It will surpass Return of the Jedi for me if they do that.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Agreed. Because that is what set A New Hope across so different from the rest of the franchises that existed that were space themed, like Flash Gordon, Star Trek, the rest of them, is that they introduced concepts
Just
that
hit
had
your
never been
microphone.
seen before. Yeah. There were so many different things in a space opera that we hadn't seen done before. Hyperdrive, being able to travel to planets here and there in a totally different form. Stuff like that. Like I know Star Trek had that, but we actually got to see it in a very different way.
Star Wars is better.
Don't tell Scott that. Don't tell Scott that.
I'll tell him right to his face.
But yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I think Sean and I have talked about it too. It's like if they were to do something with the World Between Worlds and absolutely open our minds in the live action form to that side of the Force into the worlds that exist.
Like
Oof.
like is like the most unique stuff that Star Wars has done since Star Wars itself.
It really is.
Um,
Yeah.
And George always wanted to do it. He always
Mhm.
wanted to do that.
and
And
that's
Dave Filoni
why
is one of the people that
Filoni.
helped doing it.
Dave Filoni is one of the best people to have in Lucasfilm right now, is because he learned directly under George, and George told him pretty much what he wanted to do and stuff like that. So
Yeah. So we'll keep our
the
eyes
other
peeled.
things I do like with the New Hope is when after the TIE fighter attack on the Falcon, how Han kind of teases Luke a little bit about, because he can tell he has a crush on Leia. Is
Oh
like
yeah.
stuff there, even though it's okay. George says he planned to have Luke and Leia be twins the entire time. He did not.
No.
We'll,
Nope.
we'll
No.
get more into that with Empire Strikes Back, but there's no way in hell
No.
that he planned to have Luke and Leia be twins the entire time.
No. And we'll tell yeah, like you said, there's a lot with Empire Strikes Back that I'll be looking forward to talking about, of course, here on the Brick City Blockade as we move forward. But we have reached that time here on the podcast itself. It's a little thing we like to call.
Plug time.
Plug time.
All right, Mr. Michaud, fire away.
You guys gotta follow me on Twitter, Shama Show One, Instagram at It's Zone Z. Follow me as like a band camp.
BAND camp.
BAND So, and friend me and follow me on Facebook.
Hey, Andrew, you fire away.
You guys can find me on Twitter at agarish1, Instagram Andrew62592, YouTube Commander Nerd. New video will be up the Friday after opening night, which will pretty much just be a day of Rise of Skywalker vlog, essentially. It'll be essentially Robin's second time on my channel, because
Kinda.
I did the Brick City video and stuff like that,
Oh,
where
that's right.
you appeared
Yes.
in. So it'll be pretty fun. Be on the lookout for that. Robin, where can they find you?
And as we always say here at the podcast, may the force be with you.
Sometimes.
You,
I guess.
maybe. I don't know. I don't care.
Go watch A New Hope and subscribe to Disney Plus, please.
Yes.
It's worth it.
It's only $7.
Give Disney,
Just do
give
it.
Disney their money.